Hey there fellow Planeswalkers, it's Steve for Collector Mania, and this is Cards for Commander. Today we're going to be going over Rivals of Ixalan. The upcoming set comes out this coming Friday, I believe. This video is going to focus specifically on the legends of the set, what I think we're really after as Commander players for the most part. You know, I love this time of year. It happens of course a few times a year for us, but really just being able to start brewing around something new, start kind of putting pieces together for a totally new deck. Or, you know, there's always the option of taking an old commander deck and just refurbishing it and adding some cards, or even just switching the commander out. So definitely a great time for us. First up, as you can see here, we've got Ixalan Primal Calamity. So a beast of a card. It's 6 colorless and Naya for a 9/9 Elder Dinosaur that has Vigilance, Reach, and Trample. It also does, when Ixalan Primal Calamity enters the battlefield, if you cast it, and that's important, untap all lands you control. I'm really kind of happy they put that on there. This could have easily been another Palinchron. You add that with like Eldrazi's Displacer and then it just gets busted as heck. But I like how they kind of like, we're going to be careful around this, which was really good in my opinion. Then it's got 3 activated abilities, which is where, in my opinion, the real power of the card comes from, because you've got options. It's modal, essentially. So, first option is 2 colorless and a red. Ixalan deals 3 damage to target creature. So you've got your creature removal there. Yeah, it's going to take a lot of mana to get rid of most things. A lot of threats are really high-powered. So like 6/6, so you're spending 6 mana to get rid of a creature. That's even if it can die to damage. There's a whole bunch of stuff to go around there, but you have the option here. Then 2 colorless and a green, destroy target artifact or enchantment, which is also just extremely powerful. That's honestly, that's probably my favorite ability on this card, just because artifacts and enchantments sometimes can get out of hand really quick, and not enough people really play enough removal, and I'm 100% guilty about that. We all do for more Fracturing Gusts or Corrosion Grips in our decks. Then his last ability is 2 colorless and a white, you gain 3 life. A lot of people have kind of been writing that ability off, but you can't really, because it is a way to dig yourself out of death sometimes, and I've seen a few builds where people are starting to build like life gain Ixalan Primal Calamity decks, and it's just like, yeah, you put this with Archangel of Thune and you can just do life gain all you want. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting ways to look at that third ability that a lot of people are kind of forgetting about. Overall, this isn't Gishath. You don't want to really, you can of course, you don't necessarily want to build a tribal deck around this guy. You really want to build like a big creatures matter, or even like Naya control, which sounds kind of odd, but I definitely think this fits the bill there. Getting into that, we've got some options here. So of course you can run this in Gishath or in place of Gishath, as we've already talked about. I think this card would work really well inside the deck. Of course, you're not really necessarily going to want to cast it off Gishath's attack trigger. If you haven't seen Gishath, I'll read it for you really quick. It's, whenever Gishath's Sun's avatar deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards from the top of your library, put any number of dinosaur creature cards from among them onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. So keeping in mind that you will not get that untapped lands trigger. You're still getting a 9/9 with Vigilance, Reach, and Trample, so really that's enough in my opinion, but you're not getting all the value there. Past that, we've run into the same kind of problem with like Mael. Yeah, this card's good in the deck because you get all those other things, Vigilance, Reach, Trample, 3 activated abilities, so it's worth putting in there. But again, you're not going to get the untapped lands. So, as a Mael player, I would definitely include this guy. I think it's, once again, a great option. Tap 5 or 6 mana, put this guy out, have enough mana to activate a few of his abilities, you're basically in the gold zone there. Past that, we've got things like Ramos. Put this guy in here, you get a lot of your counters from this guy, essentially 3 of them, and then you also have a ton of mana to spend on it once you can remove those 5 counters off of Ramos. And just, like I said, you can use Ixalan's abilities once you've got all that mana, for the most part, and just start nailing things, removing things, destroying stuff, whatever you want to do, really. Of course, we can't look past this guy without double activating his abilities. So, Illusionist Bracers, Rings of Bright Hearth, either one of those, just awesome, awesome options. It just makes him into even more of a threat. You basically just put your commander down and you can handle almost any problem that you run into. So next up we've got Ixalan Primal Dawn. So this is a 6 colors, 2 white, legendary creature Elder Dinosaur, 4/8, with keyword soup, flying, double strike, vigilance, trample, and indestructible. So a ton of abilities there. Really, really good for Voltron. Might be a little hairy as far as getting the mana to, cast him, but with the amount of doublers that are available to us nowadays, especially, extra point of lens, sphere of sun, stuff like that, we can definitely cast this guy. But where I really see his power is like inside the deck. For example, we've got like Audric Lunarch Marshal, 3 colors, 1 white, 3/3, legendary creature, human soldier. And he has, at the beginning of each combat, creatures you control gain first strike until end of turn if a creature you control has first strike. Then it says the same is true for flying, death touch, double strike, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, skulk, trample, and vigilance. So really, every combat, and really obviously the most important is your own, giving all of your creatures all those abilities is absolutely insane. But even on the flip side, you've already had the vigilance go through from your combat, so all your creatures are untapped, ready to block for you. But they're also gaining that flying and indestructible and double strike. So really just puts up a huge wall around you, really makes it so no one wants to attack you. Yeah, really, really powerful that way. And then we've got things like Dragonlord Jamoka. So just imagine this scenario with both those cards in your deck, and you've just played your commander last turn, or the turn before, and you're playing Zeltapo now, and you're giving it haste somehow, or just having all of your creatures have all those abilities. I would really like Dragonlord Jamoka to have flying, double strike, vigilance, trample, and indestructible. That just makes the card absolutely broken. But just another option, having that ability to say you can't interact with this, and all of a sudden I'm throwing out this ginormous threat, and it's just like you're probably going to kill somebody that turn, most likely. Then we've got things like SRAM, Senior Edificer. You start throwing this into like Artifact Matters decks or Enchantment Matters decks, auras, stuff like that, and it just becomes a huge threat that people have to deal with. Yeah, it's not your commander, but really it's still absolutely insane and powerful inside the deck. The next giant monster we're going to look at here is Nizal, Primal Tide. 5 colors, 2 blue, legendary creature, Elder Dinosaur, 7/7, so a lot of power here. Then we've got this huge wall of text here. So Nizal, Primal Tide, can't be countered, really important. You have no maximum hand size. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, draw a card, which is absolutely insane. Then you have discard 3 cards, exile Nizal, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. I almost feel like this is like 3 creatures slapped together in one, nice package. This is probably one of the best control finishers I've ever seen, in my opinion. As far as building the deck around this guy, I definitely think it's doable. Just like we talked about with the last commander, the white guy, you're going to have to do, some really fun tricks with your mana, double it or just have a way to really ramp it out, stuff like that. Definitely doable. Maybe not necessarily the, way I would go about it. I would more or less include this guy as a finisher once again. So like you think about like Talron, the Sky Summoner deck, stuff like that. Really, if you're like polymorphing into this, that's amazing. There's a bunch of options there. But if you're really playing Talron control, having like 2 or 3 big threats like this is definitely a great way to play, especially since this guy just draws you cards. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, drawing a card is absolutely insane. That's, non-creature artifact, any non-creature enchantment, basically any instant or sorcery speed spell that, it's just insane. This is like another Consecrated Sphinx. Obviously not as powerful, but it's definitely getting there in my opinion, and that's enough for me. I will include this in as many decks as I can. One that really springs to mind is like Animar. Animar would love a creature like this, and I really should have grabbed a slide of him. I just thought about him, but yeah, absolutely insane. As we talked about, just being able to play this guy is half the battle here. Like things like High Tide, think about it. You get 5 mana out, then you High Tide, now you can cast this guy. So not a bad option. And he can also protect himself. Just discard 3 cards if somebody does a Path to Exile, and then just return them at the beginning of the next end step. You draw a card off of that, when that happens anyway too. So really, really, really cool. As we talked about, Extraplanar Lens is key here, especially if you're running him as the commander. You just want to generate as much mana as you can to get him cast. He can't be countered, so you've already gotten past that barrier, but just getting there to cast him is, like I said, half the battle. So next up we've got Tetsamok, Primal Death. 4 colorless, 2 black, legendary creature, Elder Dinosaur, 6/6. He's got Death Touch, and then he has an ability where you pay black, reveal Tetsamok Primal Death from your hand, put a prey counter on target creature, activate this ability only during your turn. When Tetsamok enters the battlefield, destroy each creature your opponents control with a prey counter on it. So, obviously a big non-bow as far as being our commander. We can't use that ability from the command zone, so where does this guy really shine? I don't think as a commander. Unfortunately, this is not a great legendary for us. Yeah, you can use him, but essentially you're just getting a 6/6 with Death Touch, so not great at all. Where he really shines is inside the deck. This is a definite inside the deck card. So we've got options, you know, if you really want to push and try and use him as your commander, you've got things like Command Beacon, but once again, I don't know if I'd really necessarily try that hard for this. It's not that insane of an ability, in my opinion, but once again, inside the deck, I think it's fine. I really want to use this in like a reanimator strategy, especially one where you're like casting cards to get creatures back to your hand. I know there's a number of those. You can look them up everywhere. Just go to Gatherer and you can find a bunch of sorceries and instants and whatever. But like, think of like Gulkal Agissa. You get this guy in your hand, like you tutor him up with like Sidisi, and you put him in your hand, and then you activate his ability a few times, and then you play him, and then he destroys a whole bunch of stuff. And then you use Gulkal Agissa, and you sacrifice him, get a whole bunch of 2/2 black zombie creatures, and then you play one of those spells that, you know, we just mentioned. Get him back to your hand, do it all over again. As we've stated, Sidisi would be a great commander for this guy, because you can tutor him, put him in your hand, and then just start activating his ability. Past that, he's not, like I said, he's not my favorite legend from the set. He's kind of meh. I wish they would have given him some kind of value inside the command, or, you know, as being a commander, instead of like, I need this guy in my hand. It almost feels like a really bad Phage the Untouchable or something like that. So yeah, there's that guy. Next up, we've got Atali, Primal Storm. So this is a 4 colors, 2 red, legendary creature, of course, Elder Dinosaur. 6/6, whenever Atali Primal Storm attacks, exile the top card of each player's library. Then you may cast any number of non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. So yeah, this guy can be absolutely insane, or it can be nothing at all. It depends on what's on the top of your opponent's decks, and really you have no control over that. So the only way to really value, you know, like really get a whole lot of value off this guy is to have multiple attack phases. Which, you know, we're in mono red, it's perfect for that. We've got things like Relentless Assault, Aggravated Assault, basically any of those cards that say attack more than once, and that's what we really like. So yeah, I would definitely build this guy as the commander. I think he works well compared to, you know, obviously the last dinosaur and maybe the 2 others before him. Could be a ton of fun to play around. And just a great time to activate a bunch of abilities. Now inside the deck, I think he's great as well. Just another big threat, you know, especially once again if you're playing a deck with a bunch of attack phases. You just start casting random things, you know, even if you're getting like a Ponder or, you know, small spells, you're still getting something. So, something for nothing essentially, just for attacking, which is what you're going to want to do anyway. And then we've got Gahalt, or yeah, Gahalta? Yeah, Primal Hunger. So 10 colorless, 2 green. Legendary creature, Elder Dinosaur, 12/12. And then Gahalta, Primal Hunger, costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creature's control. It also has Trample. The way that I keep looking at this thing is it's a great 1v1 commander. It could really surprise your opponents, and really in like a mono green strategy, you're just going to be playing a whole bunch of value creatures anyway. It might... I guess I'd have to play it to really see if it's super powerful or not. You know, I guess we'll get there as soon as I get a copy of the card. But I could definitely see it happening. All of a sudden, you know, your opponent's staring down a giant 12/12, and it's just like, how do I deal with that, you know, without like Path or something like that? So really, just run it with a deck like a lot of options like Ronus. So you've got a 5/5 for 3, and obviously they help each other out because Galt makes Ronus makes him able to attack and block and all that good stuff, and then Ronus makes him that much cheaper. So I mean, you just play Ronus and this guy all of a sudden costs 7 mana, which is a lot more doable. And then you just play like, I don't know, any of the behemoths or anything like that, and you take another 4 off of there, and all of a sudden, yeah, he's very castable. Speaking of that, we've got things like Phyrexian Soulgorger or Lupin Prototype, which I didn't get an image of, but things like that that just bring this guy's mana cost down to the floor. I mean, you've got this guy on the board, and all of a sudden this guy costs 4, which is definitely doable. You know, you should be able to cast it pretty much in any deck. If you can't, you're doing something wrong. Once again, I see this shining more in 1v1 just because your opponent really has to answer it, whereas in multiplayer there's a few things, you know, they can wait to answer it essentially, and it's a little less threatening there. So next up we've got Azure the Lawbringer. So a lot of people are losing their minds over this card, and I can admit it's good. It's not as crazy as everybody thinks it is, but it's still very powerful. So 2 colors, 2 white, 2 blue, 6/6 legendary creature Sphinx, flying of course. When Azure the Lawbringer enters the battlefield, each opponent can't cast instant or sorcery spells during that player's next turn. So pretty powerful. Then he also has, whenever Azure attacks, you may pay Sphinx's Revelation, so X, a white, and 2 blue. If you do, gain X life and draw X cards. So really, really powerful ability. What a lot of people are forgetting about is that Sphinx's Revelation being at instant speed is part of what makes that card so successful. If you think about this, this is worse than sorcery speed. This is attack speed, which is odd. You know, once again, really, really powerful, but not necessarily the way you want to be playing it, I guess. If you've got a ton of mana, then yes, but for the most part, you're going to probably be on the defensive, you know. If you're spending all your mana and then, you know, drawing a bunch of cards and gaining a bunch of life is always great, of course, but you're not going to have any responses, which is usually what a, I guess, deck like this would want to do, you know. So where I really see this guy shining is in Brago, King Eternal, or, you know, Rune is another great option. Sorry, I'm going backwards. So like Brago or Rune, you know, any kind of deck that can just kind of flicker this. Blink it in, blink it out, all of a sudden your opponents are kind of stuck as far as they can't cast board wipes for the most part. Also, their instant speed removal needs to be used like right then, or the turn before it gets to them, or the turn after, so they're kind of limited that way. Obviously, if you're running just himself or any of these decks, throwing a Conjurer's Closet in there and just being able to blink this guy is amazing. Really, once again, I think of it as, you know, just a stopgap for playing Brago and being super degenerate, because now your opponents can't board wipe you, and for the most part you've got boots on Brago, so they can't instant speed or, you know, spot remove or anything like that. Really, they're looking at like edict effects or ETBs at that point, so it just limits their options once again, which is what we're really looking for in either one of these decks. Rune could really utilize that ability as well. But yeah, Conjurer's Closet. Yeah, another way to really look at this is like throwing it in like a Grand Arbiter deck, or vice versa, throwing a Grand Arbiter into the Azure deck. The more things you can stop your opponents from doing, the better off you are, and the more powerful your deck is going to be, because you're prepared for all those things. Especially if you're running like a Taxus deck, where it's just like, you know, you throw in like a Thalia, and all of a sudden all the instants and sorceries cost 1 more, and then all of a sudden they can't cast them on anybody else's turn, or you know, even their own turn, you know. Well, I guess it wouldn't be anybody else's turn, but their own turns. You know what I mean, blah blah blah. So yeah, super powerful, really, really cool. After that, we've got Alandra the Dusk Rose. So this is a 2 colorless white-black Vampire Knight, awesome creature type, 1/1. So that might look a little suspicious to you, but still, yeah, let me finish here. So she's got lifelink. Whenever another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Alandra the Dusk Rose. Really, really powerful ability. Normally when you see this kind of thing, it's whenever one of your creatures dies, or vice versa, whenever an opponent's creatures die. This is whenever any creature dies, so really, really powerful. It also has, when Alandra dies, create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is Alandra's power. So yeah, we are just making a bunch of tokens, really. This is a black-white token deck, and it's also just a really good like edict deck, you know. You just spread around those all those death triggers, and you just get a bigger and bigger Alandra. Really interesting perspective on this commander. If you want to check out Eric's brew preview of this, it kind of goes over a few options as far as like cards that he thought of. A few of those, like Athreos is a great example. You just run this in your Athreos deck, and you obviously have a lot of recursion, stuff like that, and a lot of death triggers, and yeah, it just becomes a mess for all of your opponents to try and deal with. Past that, there's always the option of throwing it in something like Edgar. Edgar, of course, is going to make a ton of tokens for us already, but Alandra is going to just add to that, especially if we can start sacrificing like our own 1/1 black vampire creature tokens to like Skull Clamp or something like that, and you just grow a giant Alandra and then sacrifice her somehow if you really want to, or she gets destroyed somehow, board wipe happens, whatever. then all of a sudden you're left with an army, you know, of lifelink white vampires. So yeah, really, really powerful. Lastly, we've got Kumina, Tyrant of Morosco. So this is a 1 colorless, green-blue, legendary creature, Merfolk Shaman, 2/4. 3 abilities here. Tap another untapped Merfolk you control. He basically gains unblockable, which is awesome. I wish it would have said light or Island Walk, just because it would have been a little bit more flavorful, but whatever. Then it's got tap 3 untapped Merfolk you control. Draw a card, so card draw. Then it's got tap 5 untapped Merfolk you control. Put a +1/+1 counter on each Merfolk you control. So yeah, really, really powerful once again. The activated abilities fit perfectly into like a Merfolk tribal deck, and this is where this guy really shines. He really just, you know, wants to get a bunch of little guys. He's a sea elf, essentially. You just want to get a bunch of little guys out there and just buff them to heck, and then just swing at everybody and kill them. The main idea here, of course, you know, is to go wide. So playing him in like things like Tishana or vice versa, playing Tishana in a deck, you know, made with him or her, I can't really tell what it is. Really, really powerful. You're going to draw a ton of cards, and then you're just going to have an army once again. Usually they're going to be super buffed up at that point too. And yeah, he's kind of got like a little bit of like, I can be unblockable, but that's not really what we're going for. We're more after the second 2 abilities. Yeah, so really, really powerful once again. So with that is the end of the commanders for this set. The next video is going to be focused on the creatures from the set, and we'll kind of go over some highlights there as far as like what we can add into the decks and everything like that. But yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed. This is Cards for Commander, once again, a brand new series that we're trying out, and hopefully you like it. Give us any feedback, and as always, we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.